Thank you everyone for joining us here at Management Matters. I am Vicki Brown, your host, and today I am joined by Amy Shy, the Senior Director of HR for the Business Affairs Office at Stanford University. Hi, Amy.
Hello.
And Sarah Goldfarb, the Manager of Employee Development for Traffic Organizations at the Federal Aviation Administration. Hello, Sarah.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you both for joining me. So the goal of this podcast and webinar is to encourage new managers, especially women managers of color, to alleviate their fears of assuming that new role. And what I'd like our discussion to revolve around today is you are managers, you've been in the management game for a while, you've come up through the ranks. When you hire a newly promoted manager, what are your expectations? What do you look for in terms of growth, in terms of performance? Just letting them know that they aren't expected to be perfect. So we'll just open it up for discussion.
Sarah, would you like me to go first, or would you like to go?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'm going to start out with keeping it simple. And so I love the acronym Keep It Simple, Simon. So the KISS acronym. And what I mean by that, one of the things I like to see in new managers is first the hunger. Are you wanting to be here? Are you wanting to lead? Are you wanting to coach? And if I can sniff that out, we are ready to go into business. And so that's like the first start for me, is looking at, are you here just to be here, or are you really wanting to be here? And are you walking in closer to your purpose? And what I mean by that is we have so many people that come into our charge. So we're held at a higher standard as leaders, in my opinion. So we really want to vet that out early on. So for me, I'll pause here, but it's really about snipping out the desire to lead, the desire to be here, and are you hungry for it?
Okay, yeah.
And I'm glad you said that, because one of my triggers when I interview people for a new manager job is if they keep talking about the pay raise, I know I've got probably an issue there, because everybody knows, and particularly in government, you're not there for the pay. I don't know any first level manager that feels like they are paid commensurate with the amount of work that they have to do. You have to be there because exactly what you said, because you want to be there, you want to be a leader, and you want to, kind of make a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when you got this new kid on the block, if you will, because a lot of new managers are promoted as a reward for being a great individual contributor.
Mhm.
And they, what I'd like to say is, hi, you're the best accountant we have in this company. So as a reward, we're going to make you a manager, something you have no experience in, working with people that may be your peers, which is really difficult. And then we're going to teach you, here's our academy. We're going to teach you our vision, our mission, how to fill out time cards, go forth and manage. That's got to be frightening. How does the new person, they've got that deer in the headlights look. How do they get over that and show you that hunger that they really want to learn?
I would say that coaching, I've been there before, where I was the individual contributor and I was that person that transitioned from peer to leader, and being able to do that without a playbook, without a blueprint, honestly was hard. And so now I'm more sensitive to it by folks that I bring on, or that I'm helping other leaders bring on, because it was a miss, meaning we didn't have that in my prior life as part of the training plan. And so what I would say first is be able to acknowledge it and let them know that let's talk about the awareness factor. You're going from individual contributor to leader, and let's think about that roadmap, and let's think about some of the things we might need to look out for, and what are some potential blinders. Are you friends with some of these folks that you're getting ready to lead? And how do we kind of undo that friendship? Or how do we create a mindset where we have to establish new boundaries in this new working relationship? And let's think about those things first, because if we go into that mindset, we're now getting ready to be getting closer to success, I think, because when you think about going into, now I'm this manager, I got this title, I got to go do these things, but we didn't go back and think about the relationship that had formed over the last 5 to 7 years as best friends, and now I'm your boss. So let's talk about things that are hard to talk about, and then let's figure out how we help that person go and have those conversations. And I would say the key word that comes to mind that helped me after going through it is a coach, and having that coach be able to bring that person along to think through some of those things. And if you don't have that coach, does that leader, do I have that coaching capability to go help Sally Sue understand this is what's getting ready to happen? Let's go figure out how we can help you with that. But I think having the conversation first, Vicki, about the things that are hard to talk about that happens a lot is moving from this role to this role, but I've got some baggage. So how do we go and address the baggage so that I can go do the actual objectives of the job?
But how do I do that as the new manager? Is this something I start thinking about? Excuse me. I start thinking about as soon as I put in that application for management. If I have a company that doesn't have a coach ready for me, Sarah, how do I go about, and once I realize I may need that, how do I ask for that from the person that promoted me?
Well, in government, at least, I would say the idea of coaching it's become more prevalent. And I'm glad that they're leaning into that, because I think exactly what you had said before, people felt very lonely and a little bit lost. Sometimes if they had enough confidence, they could sort of fake their way through it. But other times I could see people that were experts in their field just struggling because they've got an entirely new skill set that they have to figure out. Something that the talk about friends at work triggered. I recall during the employee attitude survey, one of the questions was, "Do you have a best friend at work?" And I struggled with that question. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? In hindsight, it's because you may have had best friends that were your peers as your technical expert, but now you've got to go find a new best friend because you've got this new circle of peers that are going to help you if you ask. But sometimes it's about starting that conversation. And I would say that's probably one of the most important things, is to get people probably either in some training course so they know what skill sets they need to develop, know what attributes they already have, and also figure out a peer network so that they can be more successful in this new, circle of friends.
Okay, so the takeaway for those of you that are listening that may be interested in becoming managers or have been promoted is to understand that there's a separation now in your relationship if you are now managing your peers. That's what I'm getting from you. You've got to understand. Well, what happens though when I've been palling around with Susie and Rebecca, and we go out for girls' night out every weekend, and now I'm managing. They're still my friends. And there is an emotional and a psychological aspect to that, where even after we have that talk, they may either one, feel I owe them some favoritism, or two, feel like I'm now better than them and I'm ignoring them. There's that personal aspect that I don't want to just diss my friends, but now I need help in navigating this field. And I'm wondering, as seasoned managers, how do you detect those signs in the new manager that may be happening? And how do you help them wrap their mind around the difference in that relationship? Because I
I
think
think
this is a big pitfall for new managers, and it's hard.
it's sometimes worth having that tough conversation with that person that used to be your peer, your buddy, your friend, your confidant. That most times people are professionally mature enough to say, "I got it, we're good." But sometimes there's going to be a line that's not easy to cross. That if it's a conduct thing that you've got to deal with, and 99% of the time, in my experience, you're not going to have that problem because
Okay.
again, most people when they come to work they try and leave work at work, but sometimes you're just going to have to say, hey, I really feel bad but things have changed and I can't talk about that with you, or we have to have a different kind of conversation now.
Okay. What role does communication skills play in this, Amy? Because I see a, a degradation in our ability to communicate, and be clear and be honest, and practice the radical candor that we need to have these conversations. So I'm 30 years old. I haven't read the book Radical Candor, and I have to have this conversation, but I just don't have those skills. Where do I go? How do I talk to my boss about
Uh,
this?
I appreciate that. I think that a couple things is sometimes when we struggle through how do we communicate? One, yes, do we need to have communication skills to go do what we're talking about? Yes, but we don't have to get so overwhelmed if we're lacking in certain levels of communication to go do it. Meaning, I'm a value-centered leader. So I go back to what I know and what works well for me. And when I say value-centeredness, I know that I try to stay true to certain things. So one, value integrity, that lends into trust. And so if I know that I need to have trust that gets built over time with those friends and with those individuals, kind of like what Sarah alluded to, 99% of the time, we're going to have that professional maturity. But in that 1% of time, those be the ones that are really hard. And so when I had to go through this and being a person of color, and having people that were my friends at work, very close to, and had adult beverages and all that back in the day, I had to get closer to my core values and say, you know what, I got to go have this hard conversation with these individuals and say, I can no longer have this. And I didn't realize my promotion was going to come at some cost, to do this right and to gain a new level of trust with y'all. I need you to work with me here. And so I didn't necessarily have the playbook on how to communicate, Vicky, with them, but I knew I had the valued centeredness to go to in order for me to establish a new level of trust with these individuals. I had to come clean and have that honest conversation early on. And so that was something that was innate. So my hope is that when we are developing new managers and bringing new managers on,
You
forget
froze.
value sent back to that and think that we're going to go have those conversations with others. I'll pause there for any kind of probing questions.
Did you lose relationships in the beginning?
I did lose relationships in the beginning, not forever, but I lost the old type of relationship, not necessarily the individuals. We were so cordial and talked, but I had decisions to make. And so I knew that I was going to lose some things and I had to get upfront it. So have that head on, but I would say that I did lose some, but I lost some good ones, meaning that those things needed to be, in that part of my life in that season. And then there were some new ones I gained. So it wasn't all bad, right? And so like, I love how Sarah mentioned about these new networks and these new circles. So being open and vulnerable to say, you know what, in this season, I was here with these circles and I can still talk to those individuals, but with boundaries. Now with these new circles, I need to create so that I can continue to grow. So I think the vulnerability is a must because you're out here and now you have these newer people that you're establishing relationships with to help you as you become stronger leaders.
And that's also the growth that we need as managers, whether we're new or seasons, we have to continue to grow. Excuse me. Once we stop growing, we start stagnating, which could lead to failure. So Sarah, if you talk a little bit about the growth mindset a new manager needs, that would be great.
I will. I did want to jump back just a little bit about communication and like the different techniques that we have, because I think there's a billion different avenues of communication, but it's kind of words do matter. And also, when does that message get delivered? And I'm involved in a program where we're developing a new manager course, and one of the tools that we're using is called the accountability dial. And the accountability dial, it starts from the very low level of, hey, I saw that you did this project last week, and I think you're doing some great work, but maybe you should think about X. Just a light comment. And then basically, if things look like they're going off kilter, then you amp up that conversation just a little bit to the next notch of the dial. Eventually, you have to have the conversation with your superiors to say, am I off track with this? Because I'm talking to, we'll say, Joe. I've mentioned it here. I brought him in my office and said, hey, this looks like it could be a problem, but now what should be my next step? So it's not only about communicating with the individual, it's how you communicate, when you communicate, and then involving the other people in your, we'll call it chain of command, to be able to make sure you're on track with those conversations.
Great. And where did you find this accountability tool?
You can actually Google accountability dial. There's a whole book behind it, a whole course about it. And I was pretty excited because this is, for most seasoned managers, these are like routine steps you would take as far as you graduate to a more serious conversation. And then eventually, if it's a performance or a conduct issue, then you have to change whatever your roadmap is accordingly. But I've never seen it kind of spelled out in those discrete steps. So for me, that was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like that is something in bite-sized chunks I can understand, and particularly as a brand new manager.
Great, great. So let's talk a little bit maybe about some of the tools, right? I've just been promoted. What are some of the tools, not overwhelming me, but some just basic things and resources I can go to? One of the resources I recommend, excuse me, to new managers is that they read the Ken Blanchard book, The 1 Minute Manager. I love that book, and also The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey, right? I have a client right now who believes that he's helping his staff members by going in and doing their work. And so my question to him is, if you're doing their work, why do you need them? You don't have time for your own work because you're busy helping them. And what you're telling them, in fact, is you don't trust them to be able to do their work, and you're damaging that relationship. So what are one or two other resources or tools? Yeah, I've just been promoted. Where do I go for help?
I would also say another book is called Atomic Habits. And that's a book where you think about continuous improvement, where you think about old habits and creating new habits. And it may not necessarily be the, Manager 101 book, Vicky, but it's the book
Mhm.
that has helped out some of my new managers and myself. Because if you think about different transitions, there's habits that are in each of those transitions. And so this book kind of helps you go and recognize current state habits, good, bad, and indifferent, and new habits and how to develop them. So I would say that that is a book that I gave out to a few people and it got out very quick. And I would at least 20-25 people reached out and said, can you please tell me where you got this book and the author and all that. And so I would say that that is a resource. Again, not Manager 101, but some of the competencies that are needed to kind of build up the foundation. You think about building up good habits and having a toolkit. That's one of those things in the toolkit for a new manager, is to know your old habits, the good and the bad, and then the new ones that we need to go and develop. And then there is like a skills, a developmental plan in which you can incorporate that with.
I think I'm gonna go out and buy it right after this session. That is something I definitely need some help with. What about you, Sarah?
I was going to say that I'm not much of a book hound, that I like concepts out of books, but I really don't love reading management theory books. But I
Okay.
will say there's one book that's literally like 25 pages long, but if you just think about the concept, it's really, really important for a new manager. It's called Who Moved the Cheese?
Who knew
And
my, yes,
yeah,
yes,
and it's so simple, but it's getting at the fact of your day today is not going to be like it is tomorrow. Things are
yes.
going to have to change. But the other concept I like out of a different book is to get up on the balcony, which means get upstairs and look at people dancing downstairs and look for patterns. In other words, you don't always have to be in the fray of the dancing to try and figure out what's going on. Sometimes it's good to take a half a step back, breathe in, and kind of just take the landscape in to make sure that you've got a little more information to base your decisions on. But it's about you know you're going to have to be adaptable, and you know you're going to have to make very different observations than you would as, in my case, either an air traffic controller or a technician. Most of those are very reactive sort of decisions that you have to make. And most new managers, you have to learn how to be adaptive in those decisions.
Isn't that really what management's all about? Looking at the big picture and making adjustments to those patterns when you see them going sort of askew. That's great. We've got about 10 minutes left. What else you want to talk about? Oh, come on, folks.
Sorry about the dog. It is what it is.
Say again? I didn't hear that.
I was mentioning I have a dog barking in the background, so I apologize for that.
Oh, didn't hear a thing. But that brings up actually another question for me that I think is very important. I just had this discussion with a young manager yesterday. You walk into this new job, you now are responsible for your people, whether they're peers or not. I am a big believer in servant leadership. My job as a manager is to give you the things that you need to be successful. And that could be resources, that could be tools, that could be discipline, that could be pay, whatever. How do new managers take care of themselves while taking care of their people?
I'll say in an operations environment, they're terrible at it. They struggle with burnout. They struggle with self-esteem. They struggle with 40 million things to do and they feel like they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders. So as a second level manager, I think it's my duty, like you said, with servant leadership, is to just sort of say, hey, how you doing? How do I maybe divert some of that? Or maybe we need to talk about who's a good candidate to delegate to. Are you looking at other people to maybe develop, and they can help you with some of this? It is not all on your shoulders. And in fact, sometimes the employees themselves own some of that responsibility. It's not all yours.
Yours as the new manager, or yours as the supervisor? I'm not quite following you there.
Well, for example, if I have an employee come in and just say, "Oh, I've just got to have next Saturday off. My spouse wants to go out to dinner, and I'm on the second shift, and what do I do about it?" And the better answer is, "Hey, boss, I need Saturday off. I already talked to Joe, and he said he can swap with me. Is that okay?" So
Okay.
in that sort of a scenario, I think the employee kind of owns it. So if I was a brand new manager, I might go, "Oh God, let me figure this out for you." After a while, you figure out, like, Joe, see if you can find somebody to switch with you, and I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
But to just walk in with no solution at all, again, I think the employee owns a little bit of that sometimes.
Okay. Okay, Amy?
I would second that, and add on to it to say a key word for me is intentionality. And a lot of times, even in with HR, we are the people, so we're always taking care of others, more so than taking care of ourselves. I am very aware that I am horrible with it, but now that I am aware, I have certain controls I'm putting in place. And a lot of times lately, I've been having to say a few words to myself: be kind to yourself. And as I say it more to myself, I'm saying it to my team. And so now it's getting hardwired throughout the team. And it is hard for us to say that. But now I think the awareness is there. And so now we're holding each other accountable on kindness to ourselves. And then whatever that looks like to ourselves. And so having moments to truly check in. There's sometimes I get straight to the business and I have to remind myself on the agenda. Other people can't see it, but I can see it. Check in, meaning, Vicky, how are you doing today? What really
Yes.
happened? Not just your normal, how is it going? Oh, I'm fine. And so, are you really fine? And being okay with asking. And then when I asked that the other day, someone said, "You know what? I'm really not. Thank you for asking again." And taking
Yes.
the moment and being it. So the intentionality is huge for myself and others, but I had to be aware first and then now build out evolving controls to be there, because we talk little about mental illness and little about mental wellness. And so we're trying
Mm-hmm.
to changing the word a little bit more to be more positive. So mental wellness, how do we have wellness mentally? Oh, okay. You like to go hiking? Well, you know what? Let me send you a few things. Send somebody in something in Teams or something in texting, or remembering those things. So the intentionality and the active, compassionate communication, it's changing the game for myself and my team right now.
That's great. I worry is a very strong word. I am concerned that when we take on a new level of responsibility, we get so interested in making sure that we do everything perfectly that we start to work excess number of hours, and we don't realize that we're doing harm to ourselves and we're doing harm to our team. The young woman that I spoke with yesterday, I said, "You think you're helping. When was the last time you took some time off for you?" And her response was, "Well, I'm taking Friday off." I didn't ask you when you're taking off. I'm asking you when the last time. And her answer was, "Well, does Veteran Day count?" And I said, "No." No, you have a right to that. What you are not helping your team by not taking care of yourself. And I was finally able to get her to see that you can't take care of anybody unless you're taking care of yourself. So I don't want new managers to get the idea that they've got to put their nose to the grindstone 24/7, 60 hours a week to prove themselves.
Um,
They've already proven themselves in the fact that they've gotten promoted.
mhm,
The job now is to improve their
mhm.
skills, to learn, to talk about that growth mindset and how they can be better at involving others and growing others.
Oxygen
Any
mask.
last thoughts? This has been incredible. I think it's been very helpful. Any last thoughts for our new managers out there on just what they can do to feel comfortable entering into that new role?
I would say the number one thing is you're not alone. Please reach out, think about other people. And as you said before, take care of yourself. More than anything, learn how to prioritize, learn how to delegate. And every new manager I've ever met just feels like there's way more to do than there are days in the week.
Yeah,
But I did have a director once upon a time say, I'm not impressed if you're working 60 hours a week. I'm more impressed if you're working 40 and still getting the important things done.
yeah, good point. Thank you. Amy.
Echo what Sarah said, and just remembering that you're not alone and that just being able to reach out to others, having open conversations, that's a safe space. It really helps in the whole growing part of it. And I would say that as we think about helping ourselves and others, I can't help but remember the oxygen mask. And I have to remember the oxygen mask. Before we get on that plane, I got to put that on me first. And
Yes.
then I can go and help you all. And so just continue to remember that oxygen mask and all that we do, that we can keep breathing as we grow as new leaders.
Great. Well, Sarah, Amy, thank you so much for joining me here today. I think this has been incredible. And with that, we will end the formal part.